This is The Backstory with Omobola Stephen. It's a balanced, objective, unbiased and disruptive conversation on government and politics. We shine more light on what has not worked and what would make it work. And now, to the finest personable and engaging host extraordinaire, Omobola Stephen. Tune in.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast. Today we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. By sharing our collective expertise, we will show you how to harness, control, and use your own skill set to achieve ultimate success and live the life you want. And now, please welcome your host.
Good to have you on the Backstory with Omobola Stephen. On the Backstory, we like to shine more light on what has not worked and what will make it work. On government and politics topics with other subtopics like the society and culture of the environment and also science and technology. Today we'll be focusing on the environment and I have an expert on the show, Christopher Ellisworth, who is the founder of the Foundation of a New World. He's the founder of the Foundation of a New World. Hi, Christopher Ellisworth. Welcome to the Backstory with Omobola Stephen.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me on the show. I'm looking forward to a great time. We'll be talking about the environmental destruction and the exploitation of the poor. I know that you have some insightful tips to help us by today. The common denominator between environmental destruction and exploitation of the poor made it to set up a foundation in order to solve this. Now, Christopher, what really needs to spark?
The Foundation of a New World, the core concept of it is that the main problem that is driving exploitation of the poor in different countries all around the world, and of course the destruction of the environment, climate change, and all this. The core problem that's really driving that is our financial systems. That's a global issue with our financial systems, and it's driving us to do these things. And the purpose of the Foundation of a New World is, of course, to build a financial system that can address these problems and prove to the world that it works by employing it in a small-scale city. Of course, that is the goal of the Foundation of the New World.
Right, absolutely. Now, still talking about the environmental destruction, what do you think is the root cause of this, and what are the solutions that we are looking forward to?
Okay, as far as the environment is concerned, it's a two-headed snake, economically speaking. One head of the snake is the GDP aspect. We, as a global society, I don't care what country you're in, we are dependent on our GDP system. And if you're not familiar with GDP, it stands for gross domestic production. It is a country's gross domestic production. And in short, you have to produce more every year. That's the basic concept of it. If you do not produce 2% or more than every year or than the last year before, your country is considered to be in recession. If you produce less gross domestic production, your country is considered to be in a depression, which is bad. Basically, you're valuing your currency's money on how much you're producing every year. It does not matter how much you have, you need to produce more. Let's say, for example, if you had a house for everyone in the country and you had enough food for everyone in the country, well, it doesn't matter. Next year, you need to produce more. You see, it's a problem with this. We need to produce more and more and more every year. So what you're looking at is a situation where we stop producing things to last. We're actually producing things more irresponsibly than we could be, simply because we need to sell more of them. If, for example, I produce for you a car or a cell phone or anything that lasts longer, as far as the GDP's perspective of it, you're hurting your country's GDP if you do so. So the problem here lies with the motivation of those who are really in charge. You take your government leaders, your presidents, governors, whoever. They are not going to be as motivated to do anything about these bad business behaviors, right? People who, or companies that are producing cell phones, intending for them to fail after only a year or two. Well, the people who could actually do something about this, the government, they need to sell those cell phones. They need the companies to sell those cell phones, because if they do not, your GDP suffers for it. And you could use this or look at this argument for everything across the board. Which, of course, when it comes to the environment, it drives us to destroy the environment. Why? Because to create that cell phone or a computer or anything, even a can opener, to create this product, you have to harvest raw materials, which involves, land raising, destroying the earth, right? Then you have to produce it. It's a dirty process. You have the carbon from whatever energy or whatever energy source it is that you're using to produce these materials. Also the byproducts, which are usually nasty and pollute local ecosystems, rivers, streams, and so on. That happens. And then of course the shipping the product from one side of the planet to the other, shipping it locally within your country, selling it, throwing away the packaging, and only a year or two later throwing away the product. So every step of the process, you're damaging the environment. And of course, the best way to avoid as much damage to the environment as possible would be to make the product last longer. Easiest, simplest way to avoid damaging the environment. Are we going to do that? As a society, we're really not. The reason being is we're dependent on both the GDP and, of course, the job dependency. I will get to that in a minute. Another issue with the GDP, it's taking into effect how much you're selling. Not just how much raw material or raw product, it's the price of those products. So again, if the prices go down on these products, it's actually a bad thing for GDP. You're talking housing, healthcare, everything you buy, consume. You want those products to be sold at a higher price to keep your GDP afloat. I mean, that's the mindset of the government and politicians. They're going to want to keep their GDP high. They're not going to want their country's GDP to go down. So if they could do something, let's say they could pass some sort of law or bill that would help to curb the cost of healthcare or curb the cost of housing and so on and so forth, they would be reluctant to do it because they have a conflict of interest. And if they did do something that significantly lowered the cost of housing, healthcare, and so on, they'd be hurting their country's GDP. So that's just one head of the snake. And you see, there's a lot to that GDP issue, and really there's very few people who are aware of it. And that's really driving us to, like I said, destroy the environment and our world. The second head of the snake, I'm sorry, this gets a little long, but the second head of the snake is the job dependency issue. That is, of course, me, you, and everyone else, we're all job dependent. So again, you run into the same problem. If you produce a product or a service to be longer lasting, more efficient, more effective, you're hurting your job dependency. You're hurting your job security, right? You need a job for 30 years, 40 years, however long you need your job in order to get by. So again, if you produce a cell phone, you produce a battery, you produce anything, whatever it is you're producing, you produce it to last longer and be more efficient, well, you're hurting yourself because now people aren't going to be buying your product. Your job isn't needed as much. If you produce them to last, 5 times as long, well, you're going to sell 5 times as less over the next few years. That's basically the problem that we're having. So again, from the top to the bottom, from the government to the companies to the individual workers, we as a society are not motivated to do things better. We are not motivated to produce these products to last longer. And that would be the easiest and quickest way to save the environment. And if you don't address these issues, you're going to see, environmentally speaking, that we simply go on destroying everything in our path.
All right. Now, we're going to talk about the poor that are being exploited. Christopher, what are some of the ways you think that the poor are being exploited? Now, the impact this has, and what changes do you hope to see, from the major actors?
As far as the poor being exploited, and what I see, especially in this country, in America, or any other country, is it starts with the money, right? How much you're paid and how much you're charged. Those are really the two aspects of money that are important when it comes to, you go to work and you use your money to buy a product. And right now, the basis for how much you're paid is cost of living, right? That's the idea that you need X amount of dollars to live X amount of days. So we're going to pay you basically based on how much you need to get by. So that really just keeps you in a place where you are working day after day just to get by. The second aspect of this is how much you're charged. Right now, it's basically as much as you can get away with, or as much as the seller can get away with. Whatever it is they're selling, the true cost of the good isn't really as important as how much they can get away with selling it for. If there's enough competition in the market, well, the prices tend to stay a bit lower. But when the companies tend to work together, or they just get so big, it doesn't matter. They can raise the prices higher and higher and higher. So yeah, what you're looking at is an arbitrary sense of value when it comes to what we're paid and what we are charged, and it comes from the basis of a dollar or whatever your currency is in whatever country you're in. It's an arbitrary value. So what I've done, and this is what the Foundation of a New World is all about, what I have done is actually created a system that is intended to change these things by starting by the fact that it is actually an hour rather than a dollar or a ruble or, like I said, whatever country or currencies, whatever currency your country has at the time. And what does that do? Instead of being paid based off cost of living, which is how much you need to get by, you're being paid based off of what your time is actually worth, a actual time valuation. An hour of your time would be roughly an hour's pay. You could argue more or less, much in the same way we have now. You get paid more or less based off your job and skills and so on. But with this, you are no longer just being paid just enough. And that's kind of what we've been doing to ourselves and each other. Oh, well, this is the average pay, this is cost of living, so we're going to give you just enough. And you're going to work the next 30 years of your life, or just until you die, simply to keep living, to keep up with the cost of living.
Right. Thank you so much, Christopher Export, for sharing your thoughts. Now, I'd like to talk about the human impact on the environment. What are some of the important discussions that we need to start having?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I'd like us to talk about the human impact on the environment. What are some of the important discussions we need to be having on this?
I'm not really sure as far as which aspect of the urban impact on the environment you're really looking for, as far as our daily habits, or I'm not sure I'm clear on the question with that one. I'm sorry.
Sure, the daily habits of the human.
Well, again, I think it comes down to the products that we actually produce to be more efficient or less efficient. And as much as they like to tell us that it's all on us, it's all on the individual, how you spend your money and how you do your daily business, I guess what the Foundation of a New World is all about is that there is a much bigger element that can be accomplished through the government and from the top down rather than from the bottom up, when it comes to what we're producing things that last longer, or if we produce things that do not last as long.
Right. Do you have any projects in the pipeline you'd like to share with my audience, or any exciting news?
That's the Foundation of a New World itself. It is a nonprofit organization, and the goal of it is to actually reveal these problems and then, of course, prove that the system that we built actually works and will actually help solve these problems. The goal of it is, of course, to build a small-scale city for those in need, and with this economic system at the heart of it, to help show the world that these changes can be made, and also show the world what their lives could be like under a system such as this. Imagine, if you could for a minute, if the average person, where you're from, if the average person was able to pay off their home and enter a state of early retirement, let's just say by the time they were 30, as opposed to 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. What a difference would that make in the world around you? You wouldn't have people so dependent on jobs that they have to take jobs that are crooked or dishonest or extremely damaging to the environment and those around them. From people who are scammers to people who go out and overfish or harvest every shark in sight just so they can cut off their fins. Why? Because they need a job. I mean, that is the reality of the world that we have now. But if, like I said, people were able to pay off those basic needs, pay off their homes, not have healthcare spiral out of control where you need to basically spend as much as you would on a house just on your monthly healthcare insurance, well, you would see a much different end value. or end result when it comes to the environment and, well, everything.
Right. Wish you best of luck in the projects that you embark upon, Christopher. Like to share your social media handles and your website.
Yes, it's www.thefoundationofnewworld.com. You can find links to our Facebook page, to our Twitter or Tumblr account, and so on the website itself.
All right. Thank you so much once again, Christopher Ellingsworth, for sharing your thoughts on the destruction and exploitation of the poor, talking about environmental destruction and also the exploitation of the poor. I really appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to the subsequent projects that you have, and I wish you best of luck once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. If you'd like to catch up with any of these episodes of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or distribution platforms we bump into online. And you have a great time listening to experts share their thoughts on topics and subjects under government and politics. Till I come your way, I need you to stay safe. I talk soon.